G'day and welcome to Epic Humans. Today I am interviewing Tash Hanham, who puts out a lovely blog called the Tash Diaries and is also the founder of a project called Find Your Sparkle. So today we're going to talk to Tash about all that and find out what makes her a truly epic human. Welcome, Tash. How are you?
Hi, Callum. Thank you. Thanks for the warm welcome. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to be here today.
Oh, absolutely. It was my pleasure because, like I met you at a William Whitecloud workshop and you're always a great ball of glowing energy. So why not?
I'm really thrilled to be here. I didn't expect to be on a podcast because this is something that's a little bit frightening to me, but in honouring the idea of finding things scary but going ahead and doing it, here we are today. And I'm really excited to share about these couple of projects because they're really dear to my heart. And if I can get the information out there and share it, that'll be amazing. So thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, beautiful, an absolute pleasure. And like William Whitecloud says, you've got to lean into the tension, which is scary, but yeah, good on you for showing up. And yeah, thanks again. So you've how long's the blog been going for, the Tash Diaries?
So the blog, I actually started writing about 6 months ago. So it was actually in Queensland, midway through doing the Alchemy for Success course. And I'd had a really good conversation with a fellow person that was doing the same course. And I'd sort of talked to her about this idea, and I had all these hesitations and, all this fear about, I'm a mum, but there's lots of mums out there and they all know what they're doing and they don't need to hear from me. But I just had this feeling that in sharing my story and being really open and honest and vulnerable, which is really scary, and just putting it all out there, I couldn't help but think that that would resonate with other mums. So in talking to her, she really encouraged me along. And actually, I wrote my first blog during the course and I actually sent it off to her. And she said, "This is great. What are you worrying about? Get on with it." And so I think it was a little bit of a stilted start. I kind of got back to Perth and, back into family life with the 3 children. And, we had all the COVID excitement and lockdown for a while. So I was homeschooling and my husband was running his business from home. We had the baby. So it was just, lots of good excuses to not do stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was just this, I'd really enjoyed that writing and it just kept calling to me. So it'd be really funny. I'd be driving along or something would happen with the children or, it was almost like this flash of inspiration would come to me and I go, oh, I need to write about that. And so I just, as I do that even now, as the inspiration comes to me, I just jot it down as a topic and then I write about it. And I think the thing that I just try to stay really true to every time I write is to not censor. It's not about being an amazing writer. I have those hesitations around, I haven't done any writing training. I'm not a published author. I'm not a subject matter expert, but it's just sharing my journey. So I just make sure that I stay true to that. I have to really be quite vulnerable and really honest about what's going on. And so far in the sort of the sharings that I've done with the blogs, it's really resonated and people have already been reaching out, and that's been really overwhelming, even to get that from people.
Yeah, wow, that's so cool. But yeah, like it's such an important thing to express with vulnerability. It's scary too. And yeah, I'm so familiar with those stories about not being a trained writer. Like I've literally, up until this year, I hadn't done any writing since high school, and then this year I just was like, you know what? I want to express. And like you, I had that, but there's already so many people, who am I? But then I just got to the point, well, what's the worst that can happen? Like it literally is like, why not create a voice? And if you touch and support one person, like I was reading recently your blog about having a autoimmune dysfunction and what that has meant. And, it's just anyone who's got in a similar situation, having to be able to read that is going to make them feel so much like, yeah, I'm not alone in this. And that's why people like you are so important. And yeah, I'm so happy that you're getting such a great response. And
Yeah.
yeah, you have a great writing style too. I've got to say, it's entertaining, it's fun, it flows well. So yeah, you should just keep it up. Like,
Thank you. And
yeah.
it's funny because my confession is that prior to writing blogs myself, I'd never really read any blogs from anyone else. So
Mm.
I just kind of went into it and, I just started writing. And after a few of them, I thought, oh, the words just seemed to come out of me. It was like I was just the vehicle for this information, and it just sort of pours out of me. I find when I'm in that zone, it's quite almost don't remember. And I get to the end of it, I'm like, I just wrote 1,000 words. Like, where did that come from? And so, initially I was like, I said to my husband, who does a bit more work in this sort of space, I said, is that too long? Like, how long is a blog supposed to be? All of these need to know type questions started to pop up. Oh, are people going to want to read this? But again, coming back to that truth around just sharing my journey, it is what it is. It's raw. That's the information that's come from me, and that's what I felt I needed to share. I've literally just put them out there. I've done a bit of a grammar check, some spelling, and that, it is what it is. So yeah, it's been a really, really amazing journey for me, and I've really enjoyed it. Like,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
It's cathartic, isn't it? Like it. Yeah. And like you say, like when you start developing the muscle and find, like you say, like 1,000 words is just like boom. Like I remember when I started writing, and like, well, I went back to school last year and I'd be writing essays and it'd be like, oh my God, I've got to do, 1,500 words and I'm 500 in and I'm dying and it's taken 3 hours. And now, yeah, like 1,000 words is like so quick. Yeah.
and do you think that's something to do with, well, for me, I think it's when you're in the heart and you've got that, it's just that energy. It feels so much more effortless
Yeah.
because I'm in a professional capacity. I write, and I write letters and I write documents and I write reports. And, it's a very different style and it's a very different energy when you write that sort of information. But yeah, when I'm writing blogs, and I think it's that sharing your journey and sharing from your heart about your experiences, it just doesn't feel so hard. It feels quite easy.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And like you say, and writing from the heart, and it shows. You show, because you could have a similar blog with similar topics, but if you're not coming from the heart, it's going to come out. It just won't be as fun to read, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, so good. So your autoimmune disorder, or however, has it got a name?
Yeah, so initially it didn't. When I was first diagnosed, they said it's something on the autoimmune spectrum. We don't really know what it is, but it's a bit like lupus. And then when it came, and so then I went into what I understand now was remission. So I didn't have any symptoms for about 4 years. And then when Nicholas was born, around the same time, 6 months in, the symptoms came back, and they came back with a vengeance, which is what I write about in my blog. And then I went through the process of getting a new specialist because I just wasn't getting, the consultative kind of conversation with my initial specialist. He was a very one-way kind of directive, old school, take this drug, go away, come back. And I was like, I don't even know what's going on. I need to understand more about what's happening with my body. And, you want me to take these really powerful, potent drugs, some of which are used to treat cancer. Like, this is pretty significant stuff. I need to understand. So I switched over and went to this new rheumatologist who put me through a whole run of tests and was really, really thorough. But I think he was quite worried because my inflammation markers and all of my white blood cells, all the counts just looked really bad. And he told me after, he didn't say at the time, but he was looking to see if there was cancer. That's what he thought was going on, because he said, you can't be this bad, just inflammation. As it turns out, it was just not just, but that's sort of the point my body had got to. And they concluded at the end that it's a rheumatoid arthritis, but it's more like a systemic version. So I think in the typical rheumatoid arthritis, it affects more of your hands and your feet, whereas mine affects my whole body. So just depending on, how bad it is. And I guess at my lowest, point around May, it was through my whole body. So my ribs, my neck, shoulders, and that was why I couldn't move, which I didn't understand at the time. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew my body was shutting down on me, and it was, very frightening.
Yeah, I can imagine that would have been so scary. And like what you just said about going to a different specialist too. I feel like that should be the case in all fields. If you're not feeling your specialist and not getting what you want out of it, and I feel like a lot of people don't do that too. They just sort of trust the doctor, okay, and it's just so ridiculous. So you were seeing the first specialist for quite a while, and the second specialist, I'm guessing, has offered a much better solution for your problem.
Yeah. Well, I think, so in the end, I've had to go on some of these medications, but it was more the process that he took me through to get to that end point.
Yeah.
And so I felt like, so the first thing he did when he met me was that he sat down, he got me to run through my whole history, he asked lots of questions. He asked about what my goals were. At the time, I was still breastfeeding my baby, and the implications of some of these medications meant that I'd have to wean him, which I felt really strongly against. And, in the end, I did have to wean the baby, which is it's another blog I've written about and I haven't posted. And that's a grief that I still deal with today, because it's just, for me, not something I was ready for, and it was sort of put on me. And it was this really confronting time when I had to acknowledge that I had to put my needs ahead of my children and ahead of my baby, which as a mum, and lots of mums out there will resonate with this, and also just in my personality type, putting other people's needs ahead of mine is just, putting my needs ahead of others is really, really challenging, particularly your baby when they need you. Yeah. So, but he just helped me along. Like I'd said, he put me through a whole lot of tests, but it really then helped to show, he's like, this is where you're at. Your body is a mess. You really need some help. And this is what's going to help you to get back to functioning. And, and I did a lot of work around, I even used some of the, like the conflict dilemma type work to kind of work through the process of, so I'm hanging on to this idea of I want to keep feeding my baby. And so what's that look like? And then, but what am I actually missing out on at the moment as a mum if I continue to feed and don't take this medication? And there were a whole host of things that I couldn't do anymore. I couldn't run with my children. I couldn't bend down and pick the baby up off the floor. I couldn't make them food. Like I couldn't open jars. I couldn't turn handles. Some mornings I couldn't get in the car to drive because I couldn't turn my head. I talked about in the blog how, and you forget this, so I'm glad that I documented it, but my 5-year-old son would help me to get dressed because I couldn't pull my jeans up. My hands were so swollen and so sore, and, my back was so sore and so he would help me to pull my, and I'd have to call him to come and help me. And he was amazing. Like, it's just incredible. And so I guess when I talk about being grateful about having an autoimmune condition, they're the sorts of things that emerge during that time, that the kids just rallied. My daughter would go and get the baby out of the cot, and to this day now she does that. He looks for her because she grabs him out of the cot and she puts him in the high chair, gives him, some toast to start the morning, and yeah, so I'm just so lucky that I had that support around me, and my kids to help.
Yeah, well, but it's also like speaks volumes about you as a mother, like a giving mother. You've shown your kids what it's like to just be loving and caring. So that's what they've grown up with.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
yeah, and I think we also forget that kids are hugely capable if we allow them to be.
Yes,
Yeah,
and that's that was a big one for me, because I think in my mind, you support your children by doing things for them and helping them. And when they're really little, they need that help. But mine are now 8, just turned 6 and 1. And so particularly the older two, they sort of get to a point where they actually are capable enough and can do these things, but it's you realizing that you need to get out of their way and let them. So suddenly they were doing the dishes and making themselves breakfast, and helping out with the washing, and just doing stuff that they probably could have done for quite some time before I realized, but I had to get that sick and that unwell before I allowed these things to happen. And then I looked at them and thought, look at these amazingly capable little humans.
yeah.
And that's helping them, isn't it? Because what service is it to them if you just do something for them and you do all their things for them, and then they don't have any skills to do stuff for themselves?
Yeah, well, there's that. And there's also, too, if you're doing all those things, it leaves very little time for real quality time with your kids, too. And that's what I see with a lot of parents is, okay, they're doing all these things, like the dad's got a 6-figure job and he's off working, or, and both parents are working and providing this beautiful home, but they haven't got a deep connection with their children because there's just no quality time available.
Yeah.
And that for me was always a priority with my kids, is just remembering that, they're only little once. And I'm sure you agree. Like, I'm sure it feels like only yesterday that your 8-year-old was being held in your arms and was so little and helpless.
Yeah.
And
It's yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
no, no, yeah, oh, good.
It's so true, and it's such a reminder when you look at them and you see them changing and you think, when did that happen? And you think, okay, time needs to slow down, but time's not going to slow down. So you need to take these opportunities. And all they want is, my little boy, he waits for my hubby to get home and he's got the ball ready. And all he wants is dad to go and, shoot hoops with him or kick the soccer ball, and it's those really simple things that they cherish, and they don't care about the house looking clean, and they don't care about whether, what the dinner, if it's an elaborate dinner or a simple dinner, as long as they eat. That's all the stuff we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
It's just those basic things that you as an adult, I think, sometimes overlook because you've got so much going on in your head, and you think, oh, I've got to do that thing, and there's a bill to pay, and there's, all the things going on.
Yeah.
But just taking that time and spending that, it could be 5 or 10 minutes, and it just makes such a difference to that little person's day.
Yeah, because and I think people forget that we're training them to be little humans. Yeah, and if they haven't got that warm, loving environment, like it affects kids. I always use the analogy of like when I take my kids to the pool. Like they're getting older now. My oldest is 17, which is crazy. Like, but yeah, I remember this one day I had done a like 12-hour day at work on the back of like it just was busy. Unfortunately, I don't live with the kids, but anyway, I was on the way to see them, and anyway, I rang them up and I put on the I'm so tired voice, like because we were meant to be going to the pool, and I was like, I really can't be bothered. And so Leroy answered, oh yeah, I'm really tired, had such a big day, and he's going, well, you're going to be even tighter after we have a swim, aren't you, Dad? I had to accept that response, and I tell you, like as soon as I jumped in the water that night, I felt 50% better. And, like whenever I took the kids to the pool, we'd always just be playing, but I'd always see these parents on their phones. The kids are in the water. I remember, yeah, kids would just be drawn to playing with me and my kids, and like some of the parents would get a bit like, "Who's this strange man?" And I at first was like, "Oh, kid, like go away." But after, I'm like, you know what? If the kid wants to play and we can play a fun game, like I'm hoping that the adult maybe sees this and goes, "Well, maybe I should be in that role." But again and again, like probably 90% of the parents at the swimming pool were just not actively participating with their children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's sad but true, and I would be lying if I said I hadn't been caught in that trap from time to time, where I find myself looking at my phone and then the kids are playing in front of me, or they're kind of doing their own thing, and
Mm.
you don't want it to become the norm that they're used to seeing mummy with the phone up in front of her face between her and them, and I think sadly that has become more socially normal. And a pool is a great example, the playground, the school setting. I see it all the time, and it's something I'm really conscious of, because I know it is easy to get drawn into those addictive phones, and there's
Mm.
just a whole world in there that people get sucked into. But we make a really conscious effort to do things like put the phones away at dinner time and around that evening time when the family's together. When it's time for bed, phones are away. It's just easier not to have them there, because I think it doesn't take much. You see a text message pop up and then you go and look at that, and then the next thing there's an email, and then a Facebook notification pops up. Like, it's really easy to just get drawn into it, and then next thing you know, you've been in there for who knows 5-10 minutes, and you're totally not present. And that's something that I think you really have to, as a modern parent, you have to consciously work on being present, and just being present in general. It's something that the whole human population is struggling with at the moment.
Oh,
And
absolutely. And it's become a lot worse since COVID. I feel like it really has disconnected. Like my youngest had a fair bit of anxiety from having to go back to school a couple of weeks ago. I felt really bad about it, but what can you do? But this feels like a really good segue into your other project, Tash. Tell me about
yeah,
Find Your Sparkle.
so this is even newer than the Tash Diaries, and remiss of me not to say that I'm working on it with a fellow graduate, Kirsty. So this is actually her brainchild, and we're now sort of working on it as a co-delivery process. And we're both mums of 3 young children, so we've got 6 between us, so we've got quite the brood.
Mm.
And we met each other through school, but then started doing some of the William Whitecloud work together, and this idea of this concept, it was born from some of that work. And I guess in a nutshell, it's around supporting young people to build their intuitive. So I guess young people are naturally intuitive, but we kind of bash it out of them. And so the idea of this program is that we encourage them to actually go back to that, and trusting their inner knowing, trusting that they know the answer, rather than seeking that external validation or external confirmation. Is this the right thing? Seeking that rather than trusting themselves. And so in harnessing that then helps them to sort of tap into their creativity, and just allowing them to have that freedom and that confidence that they know the answer. And as an adult, that's been something that I've learned quite late in life, or I've relearnt, and I'm embracing now. And the Tash Diaries blog is a great example of where I've allowed myself to tap into that inner creativity and really just let it flow. But if we can empower these young people from 6 to 12 is kind of our age group that we're targeting.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine what they're going to do with the world if they've got these skills, and they're being allowed to harness these skills, and and being readily promoted that they should trust themselves and go with their gut and follow their creativity?
Yeah, 100%. Like that, it's just and not just the creativity. I feel like that is huge, and like having these children working out at an early age, like what do I want to do? Not having to, oh, I've got to fit into this box. It's like, And I feel like that's very important for the kids. But I can see a side effect of this being a heightened sense of emotional intelligence too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
that's, I think, so it's a 6-week program, and initially it's about that. We look at promoting mindfulness, and so in a kid appropriate way, we do some activities and exercises around being still, and I guess it's around when that sort of emotional charge takes over, giving them some strategies around how they can help to regulate in a young person way, and how they can then channel that. And then also, I guess, going on from the mindfulness, then we look into, actually it's that process of tapping into their intuition and sort of, by doing that and observing what's going on around them, and being able to just step back and see what's happening, they're really then, I guess, that's empowering them around that emotional intelligence element, because it's really sort of using that, but taking those cues and watching what's happening around them and then responding accordingly.
yeah,
So I think, and emotional intelligence, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and people talk about, EQ and how important it is, but actually having that ability, and from a young age, to promote that, because I think there's so much focus on the academic side of things and the IQ, are they intelligent? Can they read? Can they spell? Can they do their maths? But that social side of things and the emotional side, it's hugely important, and massively important on how you go as a person in general. Like, going into adulthood, I'd much rather have EQ than IQ. I just think it serves you a lot better than IQ.
yeah. Well, 100%, and it's very much lacking in our school system. Um, yeah, where the sort of benchmark for success has always been, oh, you got to get A's, and but there's no, like I've said, I've always found it interesting. We've got physical education, which is important, but why not emotional education? So it's
Yeah.
so good that you're choosing to create a program around this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think, and it's another heart-led project, because just in watching my own children grow, and Kirsty's the same, we're watching some of these challenges emerge as they're going through primary school. So we haven't even got to high school yet, which I think is going to be another kettle of fish. But even now, and you touched on it before, that we're seeing more and more young people experiencing anxiety at such a young age, and more young people who are, fearful and not trusting themselves and not having that confidence to, there's this sort of peer pressure and this real, I mean, I don't remember it being so prolific when I was in school. I just might not have been aware, but I'm seeing it now in young people, and it scares me. And I think, okay, well, what are we doing here to try and, I don't want my 6-year-old to have anxiety. Like, it's bad enough as an adult. Let's just let them be kids for a while. So,
yeah,
yes. So I think just seeing that and saying, well, if between us, and we've got 6 children, we can see these patterns emerging, and we can see it in the school setting and playing out in some of our friendship circles with other young people we know. It's got to be happening broader than that. And so the need for something like this program, where these young people get to come in and we really focus a lot on this, the mind and this emotional well-being and having confidence in yourself, and we do a little bit around building true friendships and true relationships as well. So again, at a young people appropriate level, but just around knowing what does a good relationship look like, and what's a healthy relationship, and if it's not serving you, what do you do? Because as an adult, I need to know that. So I think for young people, being able to identify early on, or this friendship is not serving me, or this is not what a good friend does, and being able to name that and then know what to do about it and have the confidence to do something about it, to me is really powerful.
oh yeah, that's huge. And wow, you really touched on a few key issues, I feel, with what you were just saying. And like And it's been proved, like we know the anxiety and the depression is on the rise. And I've been wondering if it's just like they say, we're in the information age. And I remember reading somewhere that our children between 0 and 4 receive more information than our grandparents did in their whole lives,
Far out.
which is crazy, when you think about it. And they're just being overloaded with so much stuff. And yeah, and like you say, there's just been no benchmark for them to work out, what is a healthy relationship, and also, the awareness of their world around them. Like I notice a lot of kids out there just don't seem to be aware of, like, not spatially aware. They really seem to have no idea that there's this outside world around them. And I'm almost feeling like it is that, like it's a parental guilt. It was what we were talking about earlier when the parents do all this stuff for the kids, but not actually training them how to be human. So the kids sort of have this expectation that they can't, like, it's weird. They kind of feel like they're the center of the world, but what does that look like? They feel very lost. So yeah.
And I think, and hopefully I'm not going to get in trouble for saying this, but as a parent, I think sometimes it's easier to provide the material needs, the physical needs, that stuff's really easy to tick because it's like, right, have I got new clothes for my children? Are they well fed? Have they got the right toys? Tick, tick, tick. Are they getting a good education? As in, are we sending them to the right schools and what have you? So that's just, to me, a really easy, tangible list to go, all right, I've got this parenting thing under, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
But the emotional side of things is really hard. Like that's the hard stuff. So that takes, and it's, it's not a one size fits all. From what my daughter needs to my middle son to my youngest son, their emotional needs are totally different. They're at different ages. They have different personalities. We learned really early on that, what worked for my daughter, and then the second one, my son came along and he didn't respond to any of the methods that we used as a parent. So we had to chuck the parenting handbook out and start again. But addressing them emotional needs it's hard stuff. So it's not that, I think every parent wants to do the right thing by their children. It's just sometimes it's not so easy to do that stuff. And sometimes we've got our own battles going on, and emotionally we're not quite all, completely on top of things. So, yeah, it can be a bit of a vicious cycle.
Yeah, well, I feel like, we have this illusion that one day, like, the adult button is going to click in, like we're going to wake up to, yes, I'm an adult and everything I know is, this is it. And I know everything. And it just never happens. And we muddle along, sometimes drowning, sometimes paddling, sometimes swimming, but again, like I'm feeling like, like as your program expands, like maybe have a 6-week parenting course that can go hand in hand with this.
Yeah, you've nailed it there, Callum. You're onto it. Have you read my vision? Because I think, and the Tash Diaries is sort of a segue into that too, with that engagement with mums and building that community of mums that are wanting to be more aware and wanting to support one another on this journey. And I say predominantly mums, but anyone that it speaks to as a parent or that can relate in terms of children, then, by all means, I'm happy for whoever it engages. And the kids program's the same. We feel like, right, so we've got the kids here. Here's a great opportunity now, because these are parents who are obviously wanting to live more consciously, or at least promoting their children to live more consciously. So there's an opportunity to support them through this journey. And so we've talked about, almost running a parallel course. So while your children are in doing their children mindfulness, we'll do the mum and dad version of mindfulness as a parallel program. So it's on the cards. We just got to get kids pilot done first.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can see this being hugely popular. And it's also just it occurred to me the irony of mindfulness is actually getting us out of our mind. You know, and it just hit me just then because as a parent, especially like a hardworking parent, you've been at work all day. You've been stress. And it would be great to have on that 20-minute ride home from work some practices to do. So by the time you get home, you're with your children. Um, yeah, that would be hugely helpful.
Yeah. Oh, I could benefit from that for sure. And we all have the best intentions, don't we? But like you said, sometimes you've had a crappy day and things have not gone well and you're running late, and then one of the children's had a bad day as well, and then they have a meltdown. And as an adult, I try and remind myself, you've got to be the adult in the room, but I can't always regulate my own emotions. So how do we expect these young people, if we don't support them to develop these skills, how do we expect them to regulate their emotions when there's so much more going on for them, and the development process, and like you said, that the amount of information their brains are being overloaded with, the expectations I feel that we place on young people these days is just enormous in terms of schooling and then sporting and extracurricular. And there's this idea that we all have to keep up with, I don't know who it is we're keeping up with, but there's this race to make sure that we're not falling behind. And so, as a parent or just as an adult, having more awareness and having those skills to be able to self-regulate, so then I can help my children to self-regulate. Because how can I help them if I can't do it myself?
Yeah, 100%. But it's interesting too, because I've met a lot of people that, I got into meditation a few years ago, mainly, because, mental health. And I didn't there was times where my anxiety and whatever else was going through was affecting my kids. And it was horrible to look at and horrible to just realize that, wow, if I'm putting that on my kids and they're seeing me like this and I'm not doing anything about it, it's harming them developmentally. So for me, getting into meditation and it changed a lot in my life. Also changed how I relate to the kids a lot more.
Yeah.
But I keep on coming across people who have these excuses that they don't. Oh no, I can't meditate. I've tried it once, it didn't work.
I was one of those people, Callum. So hand on, confess, hand up, I confess. And so another thing that the autoimmune, being unwell, that's something that I really latched onto when I was unwell. And now it's something I do daily, and it's part of my daily routine. It's part of what keeps me centered. And it's incredible how I was that person that, I've tried that, I fall asleep, or my mind wanders, or the mind's supposed to be still and I'm still thinking, all those thoughts that I can't do it, so I'm just going to leave it. It's not for me. That's not my thing. And I think if you can find, I think sometimes people feel like, I should be able to do 45 minutes at a time, or it has to be this big extended process. And I think you've just got to find what works for you. So
100%. And it's also like this interesting idea that people have that meditation is always blank mind, sitting perfectly still in the lotus position. It's not true. You can meditate while doing the dishes. You can meditate. Like sometimes my meditations actually become quite a lot of movement. Like dancing can be a form of meditation if you just put that intention with it. So if you're a person that struggles to stay still, have a boogie, but keep the intention of just letting go of the stress, the intentional breathing, and moving your body, because getting into your body too can be hugely beneficial with meditation.
And it's You're so right, because meditation is really, it's a form of that, of mindfulness, isn't it? Or so it's about being present, and instead of thinking ahead or behind or, pondering, it's just being in that moment. And so if you think about it in that sense, if there's something that you know that you do and that keeps you present for 5 minutes, well, that to me is a great way of doing it. So I think maybe sometimes the idea of meditation, you're right, has a few connotations that people think, oh, it's got to be guru music in the background and, gongs chiming and and chanting, incantations. I'm not sure what people think when they're not comfortable with it, but perhaps the idea of that just being present. And so whatever that might look like you said, having a dance, or if it's painting or doing a yoga class or anything that can help you to just stay in the present with your mind as it is, and not trying to sort of think past that point at that moment in time.
Yeah, well, it's that old adage, like depression is being worried about the past, and anxiety is being worried about the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just such a beautiful lesson when we can embody that. And I'm sure, as everyone else, like some days are easier to meditate than others. I'm certainly guilty of that. But I also know that if I'm deep in my practice, like half an hour to an hour a day, that's for me. That's what I need to keep myself functioning at a level. Sometimes I wish I was a person that could do 10 minutes and be okay. But yeah, I'm someone that needs to dedicate a fair amount of time. But it's just so worth it. Like, I used to be on anxiety medication for a couple of years, and it's just been good to be able to get off all that stuff and rely on me to get to a better place.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, if I can do it, I reckon anyone can, I'll be honest.
But that's such good advocacy for it, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. But you just reminded me too of one of my favorite things I learned with the William White Cloud work was the Innocence Meditation. And it's so cool. Like when you remember that, like say if you're in a park and remember, step into innocence. And it's amazing how just that little thought can just change everything. Yeah, I really dig that. Yeah, and it's so cool. I love that you're choosing to teach kids who are already in innocence.
Yeah.
And wow, it's amazing. Like
it'll be really interesting, because one of the sessions we actually do with them is we do a mini version of an innocence meditation, but we call it like a safari walk. So we do a bit of a meditation with them and sort of do some deep breathing, and then we basically will get them to go out and go for a little walk in the garden and walk through the bush and have a look at the trees, and they come back and similar to what we did as adults, but to share what they saw and what they observed, and as we would recall all the vibrancy. And so it'll be really interesting to see through a young people, through their lens, how that plays out, because as adults, we're really good at dulling the world down and seeing it in blurs and not really taking it in. And so it was a really mind-blowing kind of shift for me, going out and doing that innocence meditation and then just seeing the world, it felt like, for the first time. I was like, what is this? But yeah, through the lens of young people, like you said, who do sit in innocence much better than we do. I think as the older they get, the more they'll benefit from this. But yeah, it's certainly going to be something I'll be watching keenly to see.
Yeah, because like it's bringing awareness to their natural state. Yeah, and then they can continue with that through where most of us forget it. We become teenagers and it's just all gone. So yeah, it's so cool that you're able to do that now.
Yeah.
So when you're running the programs at this stage, are they private groups or?
Yeah, well, this is all fresh off the press. So we're literally running our first pilot and we're using our children as guinea pigs and just a couple of other friends that have got children of a similar age. So the first course runs starting from 2 weeks' time, I think it is, 2nd of November. So we'll start. Initially, it'll be delivering locally, face-to-face, but we do have the intention of doing some video so that then we have the option to kind of broaden the reach, and if it's something that then appeals. And I think in this day and age where we're at, being prepared and having an online version of the course as well is just good practice. So in terms of one, enabling us to broaden our reach, but also then safeguarding that if for some reason we can't do face-to-face delivery going forward, that we can still have the option, the online version as well.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I so look forward to observing how this progresses, because it just, like, to me, and like my intuition says, A, this is needed, and B, people are going to want to do it. Kids are going to enjoy it. You'll certainly bring great energy into it. So yeah, I'm very excited about this project, Tash.
Thank you. We're very excited too.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for keeping me entertained, Tash. It's been great catching up. And yeah, look, we'll probably have to do a podcast 6 months from now to tell me all your progress and how you're too busy.
Oh, we'll see about that. But thank you. It's been so nice to talk to you and just to be able to share about these two projects. And it all feels a bit surreal, actually, to be on a podcast and to be talking to you. And it's just been, it's quite a ride. So just trying to take it all in and enjoy it. And yeah, just again, thank you and well done for all the work you're doing, because it's amazing. And you've just responded to your calling, and you're just so brave and courageous. So I'll be watching you, and yeah, you inspire me. So thank you, Callum.
Oh, thank you, Tash. Oh, you've warmed my heart. Yeah, well, thanks everyone for listening, and stay rascally and have a beautiful day. We'll see you later.